I was 82 when I packed up my things. A few suitcases, some framed photos, a small stack of books I couldn't leave behind. My daughter held my hand that day, smiling through her worry. "This will be good for you, Dad. You'll be safe. You'll be cared for. No more worrying about stairs or groceries or taking your meds on time." And I believed her. I really did. Back then, moving into a nursing home felt like the responsible choice. A new chapter, a gentler way to grow older. But what I didn't realize was that I wasn't just moving out of my house, I was moving out of my life. And the truth is, if I could go back, if I could sit down with the version of myself from that day, I would tell him to slow down, ask more questions, think harder, and maybe, just maybe, hold on a little longer. Because the moment you cross that threshold, things begin to change, quietly, slowly, and sometimes forever. So if you or someone you love is thinking about taking that step, please stay with me for the next few minutes. Not because I want to scare you, but because I want to tell you the truth, the full truth, the kind no brochure or well-meaning doctor will ever say out loud. These are the 10 hard truths I wish someone had told me before I moved into a nursing home. And maybe, just maybe, they'll help you make the right decision, not just the easy one. I remember my first morning in the nursing home. The room was quiet, sterile. The sheets were tucked tighter than I liked, and when I sat up, I reached for my book, only to realize it wasn't on the nightstand. Because this wasn't my nightstand. It wasn't my room. Not really. Back home, I used to wake up when the sunlight hit my window just right. I'd stretch slowly, make my way to the kitchen, brew my own coffee, dark, no sugar, and sit on the porch with the birds for company. That small routine may not sound like much, but to me it was freedom. It was mine. In the nursing home, breakfast was at 7:30 sharp, whether you were hungry or not. Want to sleep in a bit? Not really an option. Want to wear your favorite blue sweater today? Sorry, it's still in the laundry rotation. Feel like stepping outside for some fresh air? You'll need to ask, and you'll probably need to wait. Now, I know the staff meant well. They had a system. It kept things running smoothly. But the truth is, you don't realize how precious your small freedoms are until they're gone. It doesn't happen all at once either. At first, it feels like you're just adjusting. You tell yourself it's temporary, that it's no big deal. But slowly, something shifts. You stop asking for coffee at odd hours because you don't want to bother anyone. You stop requesting walks because someone's always too busy to take you. You stop choosing because choosing starts to feel like a privilege, not a right. And without meaning to, you start fading a little. Not physically, emotionally, mentally. You become a participant in someone else's routine instead of the creator of your own. There was a gentleman down the hall, Frank, former history teacher, sharp mind, witty, always had a crossword puzzle going. But after a few months, I watched him change. Not because of illness, but because he lost control over how he lived. One day he whispered to me, "I used to choose my own day. Now I just wait for it to happen." That stayed with me, because that's what this place can do if you're not careful. It doesn't take your independence all at once. It takes it in tiny, polite steps. And by the time you realize what you've given up, it's hard to get it back. So if you're thinking about a nursing home, I ask you this. Are you ready to hand over the small things that make your life feel like yours? Because those little things, when to rise, what to eat, how to spend a quiet afternoon, they matter more than you think. And once they're gone, you don't just lose your routine, you start to lose yourself. In a moment, I'll share something even harder to talk about, the feeling of being forgotten. Because even when you give up your independence, you never stop needing connection. When I first moved in, my daughter promised she'd visit every weekend. She meant it. I could see it in her eyes, the guilt, the worry, the hope that this was the right thing. And for the first few weeks, she came. She brought flowers. We'd sit outside if the weather was nice, talk about the grandkids, the neighbors, her job. She even brought my favorite coffee one Sunday, vanilla roast, medium strength, just the way I liked it. But then, life happened. A meeting ran late. One of the kids got sick. She'd call instead of visiting, just to check in. "Next weekend, Dad. I promise I told her it was okay." "Don't worry about me," I'd say. "I'm fine." But the truth, I wasn't. Because when your world shrinks to one building, one hallway, one room, those visits are everything. They're your lifeline to the outside. They remind you that you still matter, that you're still remembered, not just by staff with clipboards, but by the people whose pictures you keep on your dresser. I remember one Christmas Eve. The halls were decorated. There was music in the dining room. Some families came by. There were hugs, laughter, the rustle of wrapping paper. I sat by the window waiting. I watched every car that pulled in, every person that walked through the door. But my daughter didn't come. She called the next morning, said something had come up, and I understood, of course I did. But that didn't make the waiting any easier. You see, emotional abandonment doesn't always come in loud, dramatic ways. Sometimes it's just silence. Sometimes it's the quiet realization that the world keeps moving without you. Birthdays happen. Grandchildren grow taller. The family dog gets older, and no one remembers to tell you. Not because they've stopped loving you, but because you're no longer part of the rhythm of their days. And that's the hardest part. Because love doesn't always look like it used to. It doesn't come with hugs or home-cooked meals. Sometimes it's just a voicemail, a like on a photo, a missed call, and a promise to try again next week. There was a woman here named Joan, sharp, funny, a little sarcastic. She used to get dressed up every Sunday, hair done, makeup on, just in case her son stopped by. He hadn't in months. One morning she looked at me and said, "I don't need him to come. I just need to know he still wants to." That hit me, because in the end, we all need to feel like we still belong to someone, that we still matter. So if you're considering a nursing home for yourself or someone you love, remember this. Being cared for isn't the same as being remembered. You can be safe, clean, well-fed, and still feel invisible. And if you've got a parent, a grandparent, someone sitting in a place like this, don't wait for holidays or special occasions. Call, visit, remind them they're still part of your world, because to them, you are still everything. In the next part, I'll share something even deeper. What happens when you no longer feel useful? Because beyond the loneliness, losing your purpose is like losing your reason to wake up. Back when I lived at home, my days had a rhythm. Simple, maybe even ordinary, but full of meaning. Every morning I fed the birds in the backyard. I'd water the plants by the kitchen window, fold the laundry just the way I liked, and take a slow walk to the mailbox, nodding at neighbors I'd known for decades. I wasn't doing anything grand, but it mattered. I mattered. There was a reason to get up. There were things waiting for me to do, however small. And with every task, I felt connected to something, to life, to myself. But when I moved into the nursing home, all of that disappeared. Meals were brought to me, laundry was done behind the scenes, no plants to water, no birds to feed, no real reason to even get out of bed, except to be helped into a chair. At first, I told myself this was a well-earned rest. I had worked hard all my life. Maybe it was time to slow down, but rest without purpose quickly turns into something else, a kind of numbness, a drifting. There was a man here, George, 84, used to be a carpenter, hands strong and calloused. Back home, he'd tinker in his garage every day, building, fixing, creating. But here, there was nothing to fix, no tools allowed, no projects assigned, just long hours and silent afternoons. One day I found him staring out the window. "I miss the sound of sawdust," he said. "Even the mess made me feel alive." That's when I realized it's not just our bodies that age in places like this. It's our sense of meaning. Without something to do, something to care for, we start fading. Not loudly, quietly. Purpose doesn't have to be a job or a mission. It can be watering your own plant. It can be reading to someone, teaching, fixing, writing, listening. But when everything is done for you, it's easy to forget what you're still capable of. And the world stops asking what you can give, because they've decided you've already given enough. Here's the truth no one tells you. Feeling needed is just as vital as feeling safe. When we stop having a reason to get up, we slowly stop wanting to. So if you're planning this move for yourself or someone you love, ask this: What gives you purpose now? And will you still have that purpose there? Because time doesn't just need to be filled, it needs to be lived. In the next part, I'll share something I learned the hard way, how the comfort of being cared for can quietly take away your strength. Because when you stop using your body, you start losing it. There's a strange thing that happens when people start doing everything for you. At first, it feels like kindness, like love. You sit back, rest, let others take over the little burdens of life. Meals are brought to your table. Your laundry shows up folded. Someone comes when you press a button. And at first, it feels like a relief. But slowly, without even noticing, you stop moving as much. You stop reaching. You stop standing up just to stand up. I used to stretch every morning. Just 5 minutes, arms up, legs out, gentle breath. I'd walk from the kitchen to the garden, take the stairs just to keep my knees from getting stiff. But in the nursing home, everything was easier. Everything was closer. Everything was done for me. And slowly my strength began to fade. I remember the first time I struggled to get out of a chair. It was one of those heavy ones in the common room. I pushed, then paused. My legs didn't answer the way they used to. That moment hit me harder than I expected, because I realized this didn't happen overnight. It crept in, one skipped walk, one afternoon spent sitting instead of standing, one week of letting rest become routine. And I wasn't the only one. There was Alice. She came in full of energy, always smiling, always moving. Said she wasn't going to let a building define her pace. She walked laps around the courtyard every day, but after a while I saw her less often. Then came the walker, then the wheelchair. One afternoon she whispered, "I don't know when it happened, but I feel like I aged 10 years in 2 months." And I believed her, because I felt it too. Here's the thing. The body is like a machine. It needs to be used to stay strong. And when we stop using it, it stops being there for us. And in a place designed for convenience, it's so easy to forget how much we still can do, if only we try. Now, I'm not saying help is bad. We all need it sometimes. But if you stop pushing yourself, even just a little, you lose more than strength. You lose confidence, autonomy, resilience. So if you're thinking about this kind of life, ask yourself, will you still have the motivation to move when no one expects you to? Because in a place where everything is made easy, it takes real willpower to keep yourself strong. In the next part, I'll talk about something more personal, something harder to admit, what it feels like to lose your privacy and your dignity, because being cared for doesn't always feel like being respected. At home, I had a door I could close, a quiet corner where I could sit with a book, a bathroom that was mine alone, a space that smelled like my soap, my clothes, my life. And more than that, I had privacy, not just in the physical sense, but in the emotional one too. I didn't have to explain myself. I didn't have to ask permission to do the things I'd done 1,000 times before. But in the nursing home, privacy becomes something you hope for, not something you own. There are staff checks, there are scheduled showers, there are shared spaces where silence is rare and solitude even rarer. I remember one morning early on, I was getting dressed when a nurse knocked, then came right in. She meant no harm. She was kind, gentle, just doing her job. But I froze, shirt half on, heart sinking. It wasn't shame exactly. It was the realization that this wasn't my space anymore. That moment, small as it was, made something inside me ache. You see, dignity is quiet. It's in the way you hold yourself, the way you move through your day with a sense of control. And when you start needing help with everything, showering, toileting, even buttoning a shirt, it chips away at your sense of self. Not because help is bad, but because it comes with exposure. And when that exposure is daily, routine, clinical, it can make you feel less human and more like a task. Not everyone gets a private room. I was lucky. My roommate was kind. But I've seen others not so fortunate. Roommates who shouted at night, who left the lights on, who didn't recognize where they were or who they were speaking to. And even if the person next to you is sweet and quiet, they're still there, all the time. You can't fully cry. You can't talk to yourself. You can't just be. There's something deeply sacred about being alone when you want to be, And in many nursing homes, that sacred space is simply not an option. Here's what I wish someone had told me. Losing privacy isn't always loud. Sometimes it just feels like you're slowly becoming invisible. You stop being seen as the person you were and start being managed, measured, monitored. So before you make this choice, ask yourself, or your loved one, can I live in a place where I might have to ask to use the bathroom? Can I accept that someone might speak to me like I'm a patient instead of a person? These are hard questions, but necessary ones. In the next part, I'll talk about something I didn't see coming. How once you enter, getting out's a lot harder than anyone tells you, because when the ties to your old life begin to loosen, the way back isn't always clear. When I first moved in, I told myself it wasn't forever. Just for a while, I said, until I get back on my feet, until things feel easier. My daughter nodded. My son agreed. We all told ourselves this was temporary, but the truth? Once you go in, getting out is harder than you ever imagined. It doesn't happen all at once. In the beginning, I kept my house, paid someone to check on it. I thought, if I don't like it here, I'll go back. But months passed. Dust settled. My garden died. The heating stopped working one winter and no one noticed until spring. And my family? They started adjusting too. They donated a few of my things, reorganized my files, talked about possibly renting the house to make use of it. And when I mentioned going home, they hesitated. Not because they didn't love me, but because they had started picturing a new reality, one where I stayed. Are you sure, Dad? It's safer here. We just want what's best for you. I understood. They weren't trying to trap me. They were trying to help. But what no one realized was, the longer I stayed, the weaker I became. At home, I climbed stairs, cooked my meals, took care of the trash. Here, I pressed a button. After 6 months, even the idea of living alone felt overwhelming. Could I still do it? Would I fall? Would anyone come if I called out? And that fear, the fear that I couldn't go back, was worse than the loneliness. I've met people here who planned to leave too, but they never did. Their house was sold. Their savings dried up, paying for full-time care. Some had no family left to help them move. One woman whispered to me, I checked in, and the world checked out. That line has stayed with me. So let me tell you something I wish I had really understood. Nursing homes feel like a door you can walk through anytime, but they often close quietly behind you. Not with a slam, but with the soft click of time passing. Decisions made, bodies changing. If you're thinking about this step, ask yourself, what would it take for me to return home? And am I prepared to make that happen if I change my mind? Because the more time you spend here, the harder it is to rebuild what you left behind. In the next part, we'll shift the lens a little. Because not all nursing homes are created equal. And before you step into any of them, you need to know how to tell the difference. Let me be clear about something. Not all nursing homes are bad. Some are warm, caring places where residents are treated with respect, given options, and surrounded by kindness. But others, well, they're just rooms with beds. And what happens inside those rooms depends entirely on where you are. I've lived in one. I've visited many. And I can tell you, there's no such thing as just a nursing home. There are differences in the air you breathe, the way you're spoken to, the food on your plate, differences in how long you wait when you press your call button, in whether someone remembers your name or just your room number. Some are for profit, some are not, some are understaffed, some are overwhelmed, some have gardens and walking paths and art on the walls. Others feel like hospitals, even if no one calls them that. I once visited a friend in a private facility across town. The halls smelled like fresh linen. The staff greeted him like a friend. He had a small garden box outside his window, grew tomatoes there. He told me, I don't feel like I've been put somewhere. I feel like I moved somewhere. That stuck with me, because the place I ended up, it wasn't cruel, but it wasn't thoughtful either. Meals were reheated trays, no outdoor space to speak of. The TVs were always on, but the conversations were few. And the worst part? No one told me how to tell the difference beforehand. We picked mine because it was close, because it had an opening, because we were overwhelmed and didn't know what questions to ask. So here's what I wish someone had handed me before I ever signed those forms. A list of what to look for, what to ask, what to expect. What's the staff to resident ratio? Do residents get to choose their activities, or are they assigned? Are there outdoor spaces? Private rooms? Can I bring my own furniture? My dog? How do they handle emergencies or simple dignity? Because where you live shapes how you live. And if you're not careful, you could end up in a place that takes more than just your address. It takes your spirit. So if you or your loved ones are starting to look, don't just take the tour. Ask the hard questions. Talk to other residents. Smell the air. Watch the faces. You're not just choosing a building. You're choosing your future. In the next part, we'll talk about what many people overlook, that a nursing home isn't your only option. There are other ways to grow older with support without giving up your freedom. Let's talk about them. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. A nursing home isn't the only path, but it's the one we end up on when we run out of time, energy, or options. Most people don't choose a nursing home because they want to. They choose it because they didn't plan for anything else. And by the time help is needed, it's the easiest solution on the table. But what if we looked ahead, before the fall, before the memory lapses, the hospital stays, the family panic? What if we started preparing for freedom, not just safety? There are other ways to age and still hold on to the life you love. Aging in place staying in your own home with the right support. Maybe it means installing handrails, a walk-in shower, a stair lift. Maybe it means bringing in a part-time caregiver a few hours a day. It's not just doable, it's often more affordable than you'd think. And more importantly, it lets you keep living where your memories live. Home care services, nurses, aides, companions, coming to you rather than moving you out. You can still cook if you want, still sit in your favorite chair, still open your front door and see your own street. Assisted living communities. These aren't nursing homes. They're more like apartment complexes with built-in help. You have your own unit, your own space, but someone's nearby if you need them. It's a balance between independence and support. A middle path most people don't even consider until it's too late. Multi-generational living. In some cultures, it's the norm. Grandparents living with their children and grandchildren. Yes, it requires compromise. Yes, it means redefining space and roles. But it can also mean laughter in the hallway, hugs before bedtime, and the beautiful sense of belonging. The key to all of this? Planning, talking, choosing while you still can. Because none of these options appear out of thin air. They take research, resources, honest conversations. But they are possible, and they're worth it, if they mean holding on to your life, your voice, your routine. So if you're watching this now, while you're still healthy, still mobile, still sharp, start the conversation with your spouse, your kids, yourself. Ask, what would it take for me to stay home longer? Can I afford a little help before I need a lot of help? Who will I call if I need more support next year than I do today? Because the truth is, the earlier you prepare, the more power you keep. In the next part, we're going to talk about something many people forget, that even when you're safe and supported, you still need to feel alive. Because safety without soul isn't really living. When my family first brought up the idea of a nursing home, they said what most families say, we just want you to be safe. And I believed them. I believed that safety was the most important thing, that as long as I was fed, bathed, and kept from harm, everything would be okay. But now, after months of fluorescent lights, scheduled meals, and long silences, I've come to realize something. Safety is not the same as living. We don't wake up in the morning just to avoid danger. We wake up to live, to move, to laugh, to feel something that reminds us we're still here. I've known people who were perfectly safe in these halls, never missed a medication, never slipped in the shower, never went hungry, but they also never laughed the way they used to, never danced again, never felt the thrill of a spontaneous road trip or the joy of baking something for someone else. They were protected, but also paused. That's the danger no one talks about. The quiet trade-off between protection and passion, between being watched over and being seen. There's a difference between growing old and being alive while growing old. And you deserve both. You deserve to feel useful, to feel loved, not just looked after, to wake up with something to look forward to, not just something to check off. When the decision time comes, because it always does, don't just ask, what's the safest option? Ask, what kind of life do I still want to live? Where do I still feel like myself? How can I hold on to the parts of me that matter most? Because the truth is, we don't just want safety. We want stories. We want connection. We want to sit in our favorite chair, drink our favorite coffee, and feel like this day, this one right here, is still ours. In the final part, I want to share with you the biggest thing I've learned. That regret doesn't come from aging. It comes from believing you didn't have a choice, but you do have a choice, and you can still choose differently. I don't regret getting older. In fact, there's something beautiful about it. The way life slows down, the way moments become more precious, the way a simple cup of tea, a quiet sunrise, or the laughter of a grandchild can fill you up more than anything ever did when you were young. No, I don't regret aging. What I regret is thinking I didn't have another choice. I walked into this nursing home believing it was my only path. That comfort and care meant giving up control, that being safe meant surrendering my independence, my purpose, my privacy, my voice. But now I know better. And if I could go back, I would do things differently. I would speak up. I would ask harder questions. I would take my time. I would look at all the options: home care, assisted living, community support. I would plan for freedom, not just survival. I would build a future that allowed me to stay me, just a little longer. Because that's the thing no one tells you. You have more power than you think. The decisions you make now, today, can shape the way your story continues. And you deserve to write that story on your own terms. So if you're watching this and you're still in your own home, still choosing what to wear, what to eat, when to rest, don't take that for granted. And if you're caring for someone you love, remember, love isn't just keeping someone safe. It's helping them stay whole. Thank you for letting me share my story with you. If any part of this resonated with you, I hope you'll take it with you, into your conversations, into your plans, into your heart. Leave a comment below and share what spoke to you most. Because when we share our stories, we give each other strength. And if you haven't yet, subscribe so you don't miss the next video. Because growing older isn't the end of the story. Sometimes it's where the wisdom begins. Don't just grow old, grow wise, grow with choice, grow with dignity. Thank you for watching.